Thank you so much, Matt. And Michael Wellborn, if this whole visual arts caper thing doesn't work out for you, stand-up microphone storytelling. It's been quite incredible and a privilege to hear all of the stories tonight. And I'm going to thank you all by finishing up with something quite trite. Very trite. Very, very trite. Genius can come from anywhere, perhaps not right here, right now, but theoretically, as we've just heard, it can come from anywhere. And it is not necessarily true that idle hands are the devil's playthings, because when I created my one and only poem, my hands were indeed idle, but they were ready to be guided by the ghost of Willis Shakespeare, who I am convinced came down to nestle on my shoulder. The time, somewhere in the 90s, and that's as specific as we're going to get. I have no clue, just somewhere in the 90s. The place, a lecture hall at the University of Canberra. Dull. The subject of the lecture, property law, 2 hours of it. My feelings about the subject, dim, I would add, agonising, God-forsaken, and with no end in sight. What was I doing during the lecture? Reading Rolling Stone magazine. Now, I wasn't that much of an idiot or that rude that I was flagrantly reading Rolling Stone. I had created a little bunker made of my folders and my textbooks, of which there are many in property law. And for anyone looking at me, I look like any other industrious student, busily scribbling down the salient tenets of 400 years of English property law. But I was not. I was reading about a cataclysmic event. And I mean, this one was big. It had shaken the world, and not just the music world, the world. Capital T, capital W. Rolling Stone informed me that a trunk had been found in an attic. Someone had opened the trunk. They had found pages of poetry inside. With a little research, it was uncovered that this was poetry written by one James Douglas Morrison. Fresh, never before heard, never before read poetry from the Lizard King himself. The music world spasmed, the literary world squirted, and the surviving members of the Doors beat the land speed record to get into the recording student and lay down some tracks. Now, when we come to these recordings, please do not think the genius of the end, or Break On Through, or Riders on the Storm, or any of the Doors tracks as you know it. Think some guy, and it would have been some guy because it was sexist as in those days, some guy in a studio strumming a guitar with another guy reciting a poem called Lament to My Cock. Now, I have read Lament to My Cock since, and I feel very differently about it now. It's actually a kick-ass piece of prose. But back then, that type, Lament to My Cock, Lament to My Cock. I couldn't quite believe it. And I was thinking, and I need to actually do a sidebar here and explain. I diverged somewhat when it came to Jim Morrison from my friends. They all saw a rebellious genius. They wanted to fuck. I saw proof positive that a bad drunk is a bad drunk. It is only with age and some personal experience that I've realised those two interpretations can exist simultaneously, if not harmoniously, and in Jim's case, sadly not for long. So, here we are, back in the property law lecture. I'm being bored witless, and I thought, if this dickhead can write this piece of shit called Lament to My Cock, then surely I can come up with something. And the muse heard me and sent angels down, and before the end of the lecture, I had it down. So without further ado, and for only the second time in public since that lecture, I present to you Ode to My Anus. Anus, anus, how you stare at cold ceramic rimmed with hair. How I ponder upon your form, so pink and wrinkled, moist and warm. When I push, your lips do purse. When I fart, your mouth doth curse. When one does pull my cheeks apart and ease inside a gleaming shaft, then anus, open wide, perfect muscles hold back the tide of excrement you would eject upon that cock so sweetly erect. Unless, of course, it's a prank named Jim. In that case, please, shit on him.